If you're in burnout or know that you're spiraling towards collapse or wondering, I'm not sure what is burnout, then tune into today's episode because we will be having a very different conversation than most about burnout to support you no matter where you are at on your burnout recovery. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Bliss Movement, a podcast for big-hearted, driven women daring to be great who know that this starts by pouring love into themselves first. I'm Dr. Fee. I'm passionate about helping women to stop tuning out and burning out, but to tune within, reconnect with your heart, feel lit up, follow your bliss, and live life on your terms. So, get ready to expand your life beyond what you thought was possible when it comes to healing, wealth, love, purpose, and leadership. Here's the thing. You can still be highly functioning and be burnt out or stuck in a survival mode. You can be holding everything together but be moments away from a massive crash, a massive wake-up call. And you can still be doing all the things, have massive success on paper, look good on the outside, but on the inside, not actually enjoying life. You're not actually in your life or enjoying life. And the way that you do the things can cause massive delays, obstacles, failures, mistakes. It can limit what you can actually achieve. So conventionally, burnout is recognized as a syndrome that's resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. You're not managing your workplace stress. So in 2019, just as the time of me leaving medicine to become a Burnout to Bliss expert, supporting professional women overcome burnout, WHO actually recognized burnout as an occupational phenomenon. And there are three key elements to their definition. And the first relates to this sense of depletion and exhaustion. The second is an increased mental distance from one's job. So there's a sense of feeling negative and cynical about your work. How I would describe this as a healer would be empathy fatigue. And that's what I really experienced as an emergency junior doctor, was this sense of like, I just don't have enough to care anymore. And then the last of their definition is around reduced professional efficacy. Yeah, hello brain fog, hello tripping yourself up and not being able to get through the things that you used to be able to do. But research shows and common sense says, and this is what you'll see in life, right, that it's way more than just a syndrome that impacts employed professionals. Like, there are other people who experience burnout too, and this is well documented. So carers, stay-at-home mums and dads, athletes, they experience burnout too. So it's not just a workplace phenomenon, it's much, much more than that. And simply, it is a result of a chronic survival state. And we have to really get on board with this. You might just understand it on a level, but to really appreciate it, it's like, oh my gosh, this is significant, because being in a chronic survival state has a devastating effect on all areas, especially that of your health in the short term, but in the long term as well. And I'm always curious because supporting women, and I have had 2 autoimmune conditions at the age of 16. And this followed massive trauma, a very, very traumatic period in my my entire childhood, but especially in my early teens. And what we know and what we're seeing, and in a Lancet study in 2023 was confirming that 1 in 10 individuals now have an autoimmune condition. Over 50 million Americans have an autoimmune disease. But the thing is, and that's probably an underestimate, okay, because a lot of people aren't being diagnosed with these conditions. These are like the, chronic unexplained symptoms are probably relating to an autoimmune pathology and state. But what's really alarming is that we're reaching a whole new epidemic with autoimmunity as an example of how a survival state underpins chronic illness, with some studies estimating around 3 to 12% increase per year. Now, I know And I've had doctors reach out to me and say your claims that stress is, stress is related to chronic illness, it's unmet. And actually, no, there's more and more evidence coming through. And actually, just because there's a lack of evidence as well doesn't mean that we don't rely on science and biology and physiology. And I can't tell you, like when I went through school, what we learned that is if you're in a sympathetic dominant state, it means you have an absence of the parasympathetics, and the parasympathetics is what is responsible for healing and homeostasis and repair. And when we look at immunity, we get a loss of immune tolerance when it comes to a survival state or the sympathetic dominant state. And so that is the foundation of autoimmunity. And it's a very a lot more is to be said in there, and how that relates to the gut and nervous system as well as the immune system relationship. But what I really want you to understand is that being stuck in a survival state has impacts on you short term when it comes to your health. Well, you don't sleep very well. You're more likely to wake up with feeling unrefreshed and brain fog. That impacts you have a hormonal, um, your hormones are impacted. Why? All your hormones speak together. Okay, and so if we are impacting our cortisol levels, which is our key stress hormone, then you're going to experience problems with your sex hormones. You're going to have problems with your sleep because of melatonin, the cortisol sleep wake cycle. And it's like we can actually look at the impact that stress will have. And it's so widespread because of the relationship that cortisol and our other stress hormones have on our physiology. But it's not just health. If you're feeling exhausted and you're wired to look for threats, you're focused on worst case scenarios, you're having feelings of cynicism, it's not just at work. You don't just go to work and feel burnt out. Burnout is an experience that you have all of the time. You feel depleted, you feel exhausted, you're feeling wired and hypervigilant all of the time. So, of course, your partnerships are going to be impacted. And this is one of the most heartbreaking things to see women in, like where they are living life incredibly limited because they're either moments away from burnout. It's not like all of a sudden, hello, I'm in a diagnosis of burnout. I mean, this is a spectrum. This is a spectrum that goes from, overwhelm to anxiety and stress and survival state. It's you're anywhere along this spectrum to a point of absolute collapse and shutdown. And so, in these, even in a state of overwhelm, your ability to be tolerant and compassionate, to be open, to want to be touched, to want to be held, to this is impacted, and that can really limit the flow of connection and love that you have between you and another person. And it's really hard to see women describing burnout and the impact of it in all areas of their life, but not having the resolve or the energy left or the grace to be able to make an important decision for themselves. And you just know that that's then going to flow into their relationship with their kids. And it's so sad to think that we, as women, as anyone, misses out on their life, because I really believe that we're worthy of a life that we truly, truly love. And so looking at this, because I do work with a lot of working mums, and, it's tricky. Often our career gets the best, and then our children get the best, and then, there's little left for ourselves or our partners. That's pretty much the common pattern that I see. But, as we have a desire, like we have chosen to become a mum, and we imagine it to be very different, and we want to be able to enjoy it. Like there's such a gift in having children, right? Like the sense of fun and adventure and love and cuddles and all the goodness. But we can't enjoy it, and we're not as present when we're feeling depleted, when we're feeling burnt out, when we're stuck in a survival state. Our physiology is just wired to go, 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 keep ourselves safe, react, run over here, put this fire out and go here and here. And we become very transactional in life. We're like on the treadmill, like stuck in the hamster wheel. And that does mean that in the period of time where our kids are little and we're juggling our career, I mean, it's at the same time, it's crazy. It's such a difficult situation to navigate because, you know, the time that our kids need us the most is also the time where we're building a career and, you know, creating and cultivating wealth or financial wealth in our life. And so there is a juggle. And so, if we're in a survival state of feeling burnt out, our children miss out. They miss out on who we are, truly. They miss out on those moments where, you know, and I've just spoken to a client recently who's coming to work with me. And this is the thing. She's like, I do all the things for them, but I'm not really there. Like they don't know who I am. I'm not actually able to have those moments of joy and play and spontaneity with them. But I'm there, I'm organized, I get them to all the things, you know, I'm sure that all their needs, their physical needs are taken care of. But if she, because she has this awareness, like she's not like in her heart, she's not really present in life. She's always thinking about the future or stuck on what ruminating about something that was said that day. And just this awareness, and it's such a horrible abyss to be in. It really is. It's a really big struggle because we desire, as mums, I really feel like we crave that connection with our kids. But I also am going to say, and this is not to beat up mothers, I feel like the epidemic of burnout, you know, with our parents being in a state of fight, flight, and we're so isolated with less support and resources, more demands and pressures than ever before, there is a definite flow on effect to our children. And I believe this is one of the biggest factors when it comes to the increased rates of anxiety and self esteem issues, mental health issues in our children. I would also say that this has a big link to the rising rates of neurodivergence and diagnoses of behavioral and emotional difficulties with our children. And it's certainly not to bash up our mothers or fathers. It's not. It's to create a strong call to say, like, we got to stop normalizing a survival state, a state of busyness, doing, and that it's, you know, and normalizing that this is just like, this is what happens when you're a working mum. Like, we can't have the balance, we can't have this opportunity to have it all. And it's just the sacrifice that we need to make. It is having a devastating impact on you. It's only going to create massive amounts of regret, but also obviously physically, but you're missing out on a deep spiritual, emotional level because we only have this window of opportunity to truly, you know, support our kids in becoming the incredible little people that they get to be, their fullest potential. And I just know, we know this on such a level, especially in my community. You know, we're perfectionists and high achieving, and we want to do like the best that we can as mothers, but we set ourselves up to fail. We focus so much on all of the things that we have to do, and miss that actually what they need the most is us. And I am so passionate about this because I've lived it. When my son Jarvis first fell unwell, and it was such a sudden thing, like we woke up to him without, he'd lost the ability to speak overnight. He'd gone from a babbling 3-year-old, and then the next day, like, he was stuck in a loop, which is where he could only say the same phrase over and over and over for 24 hours. And it was like, I don't know. And he had so much inflammation in his body. It was head to toe rashes, had a really sore, painful bottom, his explosive diarrhea. He had such fatigue. He couldn't walk longer than 10 minutes. And this lasted for a very, very long time. It actually triggered this 2-year journey for me as his mum, and Nick and I obviously together. But as an integrative doctor, I was like, oh, I just immediately got triggered into, I've broken him. It's my fault. I'm an integrative doctor. This shouldn't have happened. And I got to fix him. I got to fix him. And I really abandoned myself in order to fix him and cure him. And I was in this state of like, well, you can imagine. I mean, I just have such deep compassion and love for myself at that time because it was such a tricky, tricky time. I would never, ever wish that on anyone, you know, to have a child with an illness. It's a really hard It's a hard thing to navigate. And so 2 years down the track, we get told it's a 95% chance that he's going to have a severe stutter for the rest of his life. And just thinking about what that meant, and like feeling such a depth of heartache because at those 2 years he had been buffered through his best friend Finn, who I'll always love and cherish, always has a special part in my heart, because this is a time where speech development and friendship and socializing is so important, and him and his best mate had created their own language. And kids the best. Like using hand movements, and like he just had this grace, fortunately, to be taken care of at that time. And but that's not going to happen in school. And I'm projecting forward as to what that means for him and his mental well-being and who he's going to be. And I'm breaking down and crying and just being like, oh my gosh, like what, I can't do it anymore. Like I have run out of answers. We'd done everything. We'd done it all. Like we'd tried to fix him with specialists and all alternative healing and diets, and it's a whole journey. But in that moment of surrender, what I learnt and what became so clear is that I hadn't been meeting my emotional needs. I was in a state of fight flight. And in my rushing and my trigger, that was actually having a dramatic impact on him too. I could give him all the things, but actually me being in this state of like, zzz, like I gotta fix, oh my gosh, like hypervigilance. Our children feel us. And he's a highly perceptive kid. He's so sensitive, Jarvi. He's highly empathetic. It's a gift of his. It's one that we're going to support him with, so that it becomes a superpower, not something that weighs him down. And so, for me, it was like this massive wake up call of like, feed to truly support Jarvis in healing. Like I get to support him in his own emotional regulation. And so co-regulation is a really valuable thing that we can give our children. And this is where, as we regulate ourselves through our breathing and coming back into that state of parasympathetic, like the activation of the vagal tone, and we're using our breath and we're creating what's called heart coherence. And it's where this beautiful state of relaxation and calm and homeostasis, our children regulate with us. They come to meet their nervous system is supported by our nervous system. And so, I've shared this story before and I'll continue to share it, but, through this beautiful surrender and through me waking up to my emotional needs and how important it is as a mum to take care of myself first, so that then on a level that goes beyond all the things that I do, on a level, I'm really taking care of my kid too. And Jarvis went on to, he's thriving, and it was within that week his stutter went from a 9 out of 10 down to normal, which is a 1 to 2 out of 10. And anyhow, it's an incredible story which I'll share in more detail another time. But I wanted you to understand, like, this is why I'm so passionate about us normalizing pouring love into ourselves first. We got to stop making stress this thing, and feeling depleted and exhausted as just like a way of life. We gotta rise up against that. And we cannot wait for that to happen on an industrial or governmental level, because there's too much bias at play. There is too many other factors that don't want that to be the case. They don't want, they're all focused on other things like productivity, well, more like profit, because actually what the research says is productivity comes through pouring love into ourselves first. But, there's too much bias, and change at that level is so slow. And as an individual plugged into these massive entities, the industries, governments, and your workplace and society, and where culture is at, as an individual, you got to take care of yourself. It's your responsibility, because otherwise, you'll be the numbers that will be harmed. You'll be the percentage that will be left behind. Okay. And so the powerful thing is that maybe this is happening for us. You're tuning in, listening for a reason. Our paths cross for a reason. And my sisterhood, so many of my clients are on the vanguard of change in their families, change in their communities, change in their respective industries. And I just love this because this is the ripple effect. And if we can see things that are problematic on a systematic level, it requires individuals to come in and be the call for change. Okay. And we all get to play our part in that. And maybe your part is you can see it on in your industry and be like, oh my gosh, but unless you actually take care of yourself first, get yourself out of burnout, it's very, very difficult to create change in such a an environment that just has been heading down this path, and now we're saying change towards this, where you're honoring individuals' needs. So, on that note, it may not even just be on that level. It might be where you're thinking, gosh, it's in the strategy. Like, I got to leave my work. I got to go part time. Well, let's move to the country. It's going to be better there. Or let's go have a sea change or change. I've had clients who've changed it all. They've worked part time. They've sold their businesses. They've divorced their partner. Oh my goodness, they've changed countries. And while for some, I'm sure, I'm not saying not to change. Like, if you feel strongly that change has to happen, then do it. But often we can find ourselves changing out there in order to feel better, but it doesn't work. And we end up having the same old feeling, but different story. And this is really tricky when, you've been contributing in a big way and you've been working, and then you make a decision that I got to not work and rest and take care of myself. But then the guilt and the disconnection from your heart makes you feel even more frustrated at yourself. And then you spiral and the fatigue gets worse and worse. And that has happened to many, many women. And I have had so many clients who have come to work with me because they've tried all of that, but yet realize that there's something bigger at play here that is in our control, that we get to change out there, but also we get to change in here that will then support the change out there that we implement. And so the signs of burnout, if you can really appreciate the signs of what is playing out when it comes to being stuck in a sympathetic dominant state or a survival state. So this is the fight flight response. So we're having events happening in our life all of the time. The meaning we give something, which is based on the hypothalamus, it's a part of our brain, it perceives whether that event is a threat or not. And this is a key point of what is required in order to have lasting change. Because we can't, like, a lot of women try and remove stresses in their life, but then they end up having these really limited life, like controlling life, and this is all I can do. And this is where really women end up in a very difficult, tricky state in burnout. And it's a consequence of trying to control out there in order to feel better in here. But actually, it's about really looking at what science is saying in the stress cycle, the normal stress cycle. Stress is not a bad thing. Stress is actually important. We need to have stress in our life. There's a gift to it. It helps support our immune system to fight infection. It helps us to actually focus on what needs to be changed. There's a lot of benefits. It helps us to run and act quickly. Okay, there's benefits to it. But when the stress cycle, which is normal and healthy, then becomes the burnout cycle, it's because we get stuck in that fight-flight response. So we have an event, we perceive a threat, we then get activation of our sympathetics, which is a release of cortisol and noradrenaline and adrenaline. We get our hearts racing, our eyes, dilate, our pupils dilate, and oh my gosh, we get hyper-focused on where is the threat, like I got to keep like worst case scenario with that is a survival state, which is fantastic if we want to run away from a saber-toothed tiger. But when it's like this constant receiving emails from your boss or a conversation with your partner, and this is where we spiral into the burnout cycle. And this is really, really important, because we just, if we don't have the activation of the parasympathetics, which is it's the big breath that we take after we've rushed, fought, fight, or sometimes freeze. The freeze is the real amplified effect of a sympathetic, like a dysfunctional nervous system. Oh my gosh, oh wow. Then we we end up going into the burnout cycle. So the parasympathetics is that reset to calm. The body then takes care of itself and makes sure that detoxification comes back on board and, supports the body to feel rested and relaxed, and procreation. So we're seeing infertility on the rise. Why? Because we're all living in a stress state and all our hormones speak together. So when we enter into that burnout cycle, we get a compromise of our physical well-being, which is what I was talking about before. It's like an immediate impact to our health. And this is where we don't sleep well and we have brain fog and we wake up feeling a bit irritable. Now, this is where it's just like a gut punch. This burnout cycle, if left unaddressed, means that we just get worse and worse and worse, because the more sensitive to stress we are, the more we are perceiving normal events as a threat. So we're now stuck in hypervigilant, wired for threats, focusing on worst case scenarios, everything, like focusing on the things that we don't want in life, and on a neuroscience, psychology, metaphysical level. How do we tap in? We cannot tap into the fullest potential of our life, happiness, success, healing, joy right now. You can eat all of the healthy foods, biodynamic, organic, low carb, I don't know, all the things, all the labels, low salicylate, histamine diets. But if you're in a stressed out state, you will not digest and assimilate the food. And you can say all the things, have the conversations, do all the things, but you just won't be able to enjoy it or have a resilience or capacity or a strength within you, because you're in this burnout cycle. And so you start being more sensitive to little things like an email, a ding on your phone, I don't know, a look from your friend, over, really focusing on the wrong things in life. Like in any moment, like right now, your brain, like you are receiving billions and billions of bits of information, but you're only consciously aware of 3,000 to 4,000 bits. So in one particular moment in time, your experience of that moment of time is determined by the lens that you're looking through. So is it this 3,000 or 4,000 bits, or is it this 3,000 or 4,000 bits over here? What you can see and notice and experience over here is going to be very different to over here. So one particular event, you could have thousands, millions of different experiences based on what? The lens that you look through. The 3,000 to 4,000 bits that you're consciously aware of, that is determined by perception. And this is really big. So the signs of burnout are vast, and it relates to this state of fight, flight, sympathetic dominance. It relates to disconnection. If you're stuck in a hypervigilant, sympathetic dominant state, you're disconnected to your heart. You're stuck in your head, thinking, thinking, thinking. And being tapped into your heart is where we get to experience flow of energy, of love and connection, and a lightness. And what happens on an emotional level, we become so full of negative emotions. It's like baggages. And this is what I really experienced and this is episode number 2, my experience of burnout. It's like it's just felt like I was carrying around bagfuls of emotions of the past because I didn't know how to handle it. And so you just become a whole mess of shame and ick. And it's all under the surface. And we get so afraid of being by ourselves because, what am I going to find there? Like we're not comfortable with ourselves. But on a physical level, like I said, all of our hormones talk together. So of course you can just be like, okay, well, therefore sleep will be affected. My sugars are going to be affected. And we might have sugar crashes or brain fog that happens with that. I also might experience sex hormone issues, so low libido. And, we have an increase, again, an epidemic of female hormone issues. And in conventional medicine, you send, if you've got a patient who has PMS or irregular bleeding or painful cycles, you send them to a gynecologist. If you have someone who has sugar issues, you send them to an endocrinologist. It's all separate, but hello. all of our hormones talk together, and we rather than just looking at drugs to, and I'm not opposed to drugs, but we got to keep a bigger perspective and really think about, well, why is it that we have this hormonal issues, and how does that relate to our adrenals, and how does that relate to the way that we're living in our circumstances? And that takes a bit of time to support clients with, and that's not really how our system is set up, is it? And so I then, as a doctor supporting many, many patients with chronic unexplained symptoms and chronic autoimmunity, and, you know, as a general practitioner, you end up having the difficult, complex cases. And the prolonged survival states will lead to diagnoses, you know, and mental health issues. And I know that that may not be accepted in conventional, but I truly believe that. And digestive issues, for so many years, I've focused on supporting with, you know, patients with digestive issues like SIBO and dysbiosis and bloating and all of these things. And, you know, you might have tried all the things, supplements and testing and taking drugs. You may not, you might have just gone to your GP and got the scopes and been told it's all normal and going to have to live with that. But if you've explored functional medicine in terms of helping yourself right now and feeling like you're not getting further ahead, the reason is that there is a very strong gut brain axis. And that is, if you're, you know, anxious or in a survival state, it will impact the gut, and vice versa. The gut in itself will then feed back and impact how we feel. So we got to have a look at that bidirectional relationship. But it also cognitive issues, you know, if you're feeling like, oh my God, I feel like I've got my head in a cloud and there's just this fog, and it's just not creative anymore, and it's really hard. I got writer's block, my motivation, procrastination is just, oh gosh, off the charts. And I'm not as an innovative as I used to be. And it's like, where have I gone? And so in terms, you also get a sense of, it impacts your confidence. Like burnout is, you know, the definition was that it reduces your professional efficacy. Yeah, but a big key player of is that you in turn become less confident and more a sense of a failure. And you know, we can beat ourselves up with that, and we lose a sense of strength and resilience to handle life's messy times, because we're stuck in that burnout cycle, and we're more and more sensitive to stress. So the things that were normally benign now have a massive impact on us. We become less tolerant to life, right? And that's tricky, because life is going to keep doing all the things that life does, right? It's not all of a sudden be like, oh, well, you're in burnout, so I'll stop throwing you curveballs and giving you lemons. Life doesn't work that way. In fact, it probably increases more and more, so that it's like the carrot or stick analogy. In my experience, universal love will give us a carrot or stick to help us to course correct in life. And so often we'll get even bigger of a stick, like now we have a new diagnosis, or now we're having a divorce, or gosh, we're having a massive wake up call because of this disaster. That's the 4Ds, you know, death, disease, disaster, divorce. And it happens. Our problems bring us back to us, to our truth. They are actually the greatest gift. And I know that's a silver lining on it, but it's been my experience, my own journey in supporting hundreds and hundreds of women navigating burnout. And it's my intention, my desire for you, that you see that this is the wake up call that you need, because stuck in burnout, it impacts us on a deep spiritual level, like how we connected we feel. And in that connection is the bliss. It's the joyous sense of fulfillment and contentment. Okay. And you just cannot enjoy life if you're stuck in a survival mode. It's very, very difficult on one level. And sometimes we just don't know, like it just becomes our baseline, that sense of bleh, meh. And it's only when we come through to the other side that we realize, oh my gosh, I can't believe, and we can have some regret at that stage of like, why didn't I do this sooner for myself? You know? And at that time, I always tell my clients, sweetheart, just hold gratitude for what you have, that you're here now. And that's a part of your wisdom. And that will support you to never go back there, because it's not just enough to get out of burnout, it's to ensure that we have an ever expanding blissful life. No one ever wants to get back there again. When women come and work with me, it's never about doing a program with Dr. Fee. It's about, you know, ensuring they get an incredible result, ensuring that they never ever go back into burnout, not just get out of burnout, but stay out of burnout and experience new levels of success and wealth in their life. So if it's not just related to work, as WHO says, it's an occupational phenomenon. And so we can then start looking at it at a different way, this different perspective, then what's the answer? And I've sort of covered this already in a little bit of detail. And, I guess it requires a whole thing, and slides is probably important. I invite you to check out some of my free classes and some of the other episodes here around looking at science. Then it means that we get to support our perception of the events that's happening in our lives, how we think, how we feel, how we react, our experience. That's really important because that's going to support us out of the burnout cycle to get back into a normal stress state. Let's not try and focus on reducing stress. Stress is going to happen. It's about how we see events. That's, if we are reacting, if we're resisting life, that creates stress. Resistance equals stress. Yeah. But we can support our perception to support ourselves to get out of the burnout cycle and back into a normal, healthy stress cycle. Activating our parasympathetic so that we reset to calm and we really support our nervous system to be healthy and flexible so we can deal with and be adaptable and to stress and life being messy. It's also about how to really support ourselves on a mind, like our humanness, the emotional part of us, the part of us that does suffer and experience pain. We can't avoid pain, but we can avoid the suffering. And this is also this process of then giving ourselves permission to tune in, like get to know ourselves in a deep, profound way and tap into our own wisdom to make better decisions for ourselves at every single step of the way. Again, something I'm so passionate about because it's about having a soul-aligned life, which is a way of saying, tapping into your own answers, solutions, trusting yourself, meeting your own needs so that every step is really the greatest potential for you and in the end for the world. Now, I invite you, taking a nice deep breath in, I invite you to really take all of this information, this shift in perspective as to what burnout actually is or isn't, that it's more than an occupational phenomenon. There's all this information that I shared with you about being in a survival mode, and I'm inviting you to hold up the mirror in your own life. Is there an opportunity to see something that you previously couldn't or chose not to? And stay curious. This is not a time to get all judgy about yourself. This is a time to really practice being curious and use what you see and tuning into, like how your relationship is with your partner, how you are showing up as a mum, how you get to support them, where your kids are at, where you're at with your work. What are you putting on hold? Where are you at with knowing yourself and really making a really powerful decision for you? Use it all as feedback to fuel your dreams, not to beat yourself up, not to sabotage them. Fuel your decisions, fuel pouring love into yourself first so that then you can transform your life from the inside out. And everything that I have shared with you, on a physiological level, we only tapped a little bit into psychology, but on a psychological level, on a metaphysical level, it's understanding everything I've shared with you in today's episode, why it's so possible to transform your life from the inside out. When you think and feel different, you're going to make different decisions. You're going to respond differently to life, to the events that are happening in your life, and in turn you're going to experience life differently, that then supports you to think differently, that then supports you to feel differently, that actually impacts your decisions that you make and the actions you take, so that you be different in life and that you experience life differently, and so on and so forth. And everything in your life is an extension of you. And this can be like, oh my gosh, but actually it can fuel you. Because when you truly align with the fact that how you feel and how you are in your relationships actually contributes to your relationship, like It means that you can do this work, like use it to fuel your decision to take care of yourself, to pour love into yourself first. Like use it to really fuel your decision to get out of burnout, because others flourish, your children will flourish like Jarvis did. Once I realized, oh my gosh, it's time for me to stop chasing and trying to fix and instead take care of myself. And then his little body could relax, and oh, things just shifted from then after 2 hard, long years doing all the things, all the strategy, working with all the people. Now, am I saying that that's going to happen with you straight away and your kids if they've got all the diagnoses? No, but it's certainly going to help you to advocate for them and find the right solutions for them and have the capacity and have the space in your life for what's most important. And it's so, so important. Others flourish, your career flourishes, everything's an extension of you and your life. So I know it's been a big conversation. We're talking about some really heavy things, but sweetheart, this is like, oh my gosh. When we have the knowledge, it supports us to make better decisions for ourselves. And if you're really, really, keen, like this is the time and you're ready to make such impactful change in your life, then I invite you to apply to work with us in Expanding Bliss, because you get all the things to support you in getting out of burnout and claiming your bliss. And in turn, it's not just for you. It's like, as I shared, it's everything for the world, for the people you love and your career. It's the best thing that you can do is to invest in yourself. It gives you the best return on investment. And so, yes, click on the link and apply to work with us. And if you're the right fit, then we will jump on a call together, me and my team. And it's just knowing that you get to be supported by a framework that is comprehensive and really weaving together the science and the spirituality. It's not just enough to have knowledge. We've got to be able to incorporate this, address the things that we need to address in the right way so that we become the greatest advocates for ourselves, that we become the greatest versions of ourselves in life. So hope this is I really look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye-bye. It has been so beautiful spending this time with you. If you found today's episode inspiring or helpful, please subscribe, give us a good review, and share the love. I invite you to be a part of the Bliss movement. Join our Bliss Sisterhood or apply to join my Expanding Bliss program. The links are in my bio, and I cannot wait to be doing live with you soon. Stay tuned for the next episode, where I'll be sharing more training, stories, strategies, and solutions to guide you towards your bliss.